and get started then. Ange, can you hear me and see my screen all right?
I can. It looks like we have a hand raised here. Just a second.
All right.
I don't know. Oh, hand is down. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So welcome everyone. My name is Angie and I work in the communications department. I'm just on right now to help Jody out. He was having some issues the last time with muting and unmuting, so I'm just here to kind of help. So Jody, why don't you go ahead and take it away, and if anybody has any issues, go ahead and send something into the chat window, and then I'll be able to see it and try to help the best I can, and I'll just be helping Jody as we move along.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Ange. We'll go ahead and get started. What we're talking about today are the 8 laws of daily focus for double-digit profit. Now, this was something that Jack had rolled out and the team had rolled out at the super meeting in San Diego. So some of you might have seen this in San Diego this fall, and you know what this is a compilation of best practices on how to achieve double-digit profitability in your business. So these are real pearls of wisdom that are proven best practices. These aren't theory. Now, some of the things that we're going to talk about today might not necessarily pertain to how your business is currently structured, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. This is great content, and it is available on the Nexstar site. So if you want to view the training and events tab, go to the super meeting at the bottom, and if you scroll down, you'll see the 8 laws, and there are currently 5 of these loaded. So we'll continue to build those, but these are actually on the Nexstar site. You can watch them as they're delivered at the super meeting in San Diego. So it's not you get to see the real experience, so that's pretty cool. And again, there are 8 laws total. We currently have 5 of those on there, and you should have seen the posters in your service center, perhaps. So some of you might have been there. I'm going to touch on the messages that Jack, Julian, Keith, Dan, and the rest of the team shared. And but I want to magnify this a little bit to talk about what it means at a department level. I'm going to be covering these 8 laws over the next few months with this same focus on how it relates to service management. So we're just going to take this down to a little bit more of a micro level as to what this can mean from a service management perspective. Okay. At the end of this call, we'll open this up for questions. You can raise your hand, and we'll either unmute or be able to answer the questions as you type them in. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Okay. Here's a sample of the poster you should have seen. What I'd like you to do is imagine for a moment that your service department is repeatable and consistent. Okay. So what does a repeatable and consistent service department look like? Is it profitable? Is it staffed properly? Is it steady in workload? Are you growing? And here's another thing to think about. Is it a department that you're proud to run? So I'd like you to imagine for a moment what would your dream service department look like, and what would be some of the things, some of the chinks in the armor that are maybe that you're struggling with right now. What would those look like if it was hitting on all cylinders? Okay, so we're going to talk about a few of those things. What does it mean to be repeatable and consistent? Let's start with technical ability. The technical ability of your team matches the needs of your customers. So if you're wanting to get into commercial, for example, or maybe some highly technical or specialized areas within your business, without sustainable ability to deliver those, that could be a problem. And so for example, if you want to get into generators, but you really only had one technician that was qualified to do that, or you hire a technician who's the greatest thing since sliced bread at geothermal systems, for example, but maybe he's the only person that you've got that can do it. That would be an example of getting into a technical area that you might not be able to sustain. So, and this is a lesson I learned several years ago. We used to do some dabble in plumbing. If I was selling a big air conditioning system and the customer wanted a water heater as well, you know, I hated to pass up the revenue. But the reality of it is I really wasn't properly staffed to support that customer if we had a problem. Okay, I see this often with commercial business. We want to get into light commercial, or we want to, we think that there's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, so we try to get into commercial ability. But in reality, we might not have the technicians to really properly support commercial customers, and we can get in over our head pretty quickly. So that's an idea of where the technical ability can really be a challenge for your team. Next, the service is equally high regardless of which technician you send to the home. The customer service experience should be consistent. The process is defined how the tune-up or the system check is performed, for example. Do we do it the same way every time? What is cleaned, and in what order do we do it? A tune-up, for example, whether it be plumbing, electrical, or HVAC, a clean and check, a maintenance visit, really needs to be a consistent process. If you send a technician to a home and he pulls the blower and does this amazing job, and then the next technician goes out 6 months later and he really doesn't do much of anything, you could check it, turn it on, and hit it with a hose, the customer is going to see that disconnect. Okay, it's not consistent, and so that's what we're talking about, is how do we make that more consistent? Think about McDonald's. McDonald's is the model that everybody talks about, and maybe we don't eat at McDonald's, maybe we do, but one thing we can't argue, the burger's consistent. It's built the same way. If you go to a Big Mac anywhere around the country, and even in the world for that matter, it's going to taste the same. It's a very clearly defined process. That's been a huge key to their success over the several decades. Standardization. If you have techs that you don't feel comfortable sending to someone's house, that's probably an indicator that there's a challenge with your consistency. And let me, so think about that. You've got the customer that is maybe a challenge, or a high maintenance customer, or this one's the smoking gun, and you really need to make sure that you get the right guy out there. If you're really trying to have a tough time figuring out who you're going to send out there, that's probably a pretty good indicator that you're not consistent in your process. And there are a lot of things that can contribute to that. I had a member just this week ask me, hey, I want to have a private service system on site. Who's the best trainer? And it was an interesting question, because I thought about all of our trainers. I said, I really can't put my finger on one and say this is the best trainer. These guys are all absolutely consistent. They're all absolutely amazing, and they all follow the exact same process. And so that's not by accident. It's by careful selection, it's by training, and it's about having a very clearly defined process of what we're going to do. And that same thing totally applies to your service department. If you've got guys on your team that really you're not comfortable sending to your grandmother's house, then that's a red flag. Okay, so that's what we're talking about: repeatable and consistent. Pricing and how we charge needs to be the same. We have to be consistent and repeatable in our pricing. We owe it to our customers, and we owe it to ourselves too, because if we're not consistent in what we charge our customers, we're probably not consistent in the profitability that we're getting from those jobs. If the service manager is figuring out all the prices, then it's probably not a sustainable process. And I see that often, where technicians are calling in and the service manager is the guy that's sharpening the pencil and figuring out how much we should charge for this or that. A lot of times on commercial, for example, where it's a time and material type situation, that is not a sustainable model. It's not scalable, and it gets out of control pretty quickly. If the technicians have the ability to discount or give things away, again, that's not a consistent process. So our price should have the same credibility as a price tag. If you walk into a store and you look at something on a shelf, it's got a price tag in there, you're less likely to haggle with it. It's really clearly defined, and that's the price. Now, I'm not saying we will never discount anything, but there needs to be control in place, and I like that to be the service manager typically. somebody out in the field cannot make up the price, and we have inconsistent pricing from customer to customer. And again, in the commercial business, that becomes a huge problem because those invoices are usually paid and scrutinized by the same person. So we have to have consistency in what we do. Manage the discounts. How your team delivers your brand must be consistent. So I'm talking about things like vehicle appearance. What is your process, and how your vehicle looks? Do we have truck inspections? Do they look good? Do they look consistent? Is there accountability for what that looks like? Because the way that vehicle looks is your brand. And that's a good way to think about it. This is our brand. Technician appearance, grooming standards, uniform. Are they clean? Are they using the uniform service that you're paying for? And you see that quite often where a uniform might be faded, it doesn't look quite up to snuff, and the guy's taking the uniforms home and washing them, at home, which, doesn't deliver the brand that you're looking for. You want your uniform to be not faded. You want it to be crisp. You don't want it to have pookie all over the pants. You want it to be nice, presentable. That's your brand. That's who you are. And this applies to all departments. Sometimes we'll see, dig crews or HVAC installation crews where really they're not held to the same standard, but the customer doesn't see, oh, this is the install department or this is the service department. The customer just sees your brand, so every department in your company is a representation of your brand. And I always stress this with installation teams. I understand that we're crawling under houses, we're crawling in attics, and we're going to get dirty, but when you first meet that customer, you never get a second chance to make that first impression. So that's a really critical time where we make that lasting impression. And then after that, after they've got to know you, that we're comfortable with you, then of course we put our crawl suits on or whatever our process is at that point. But you don't get a second chance to make that first impression, especially if you're going to be in that house for the next day. Driving the vehicle that's a rolling billboard, and I've seen a lot of crazy stats about how many thousands of people view your truck in a metropolitan area on any given day as it's rolling down the road. So that's why it's critical to have a process where your technicians know that how they drive is a representation of the company. Because everybody on the road that sees that vehicle is a potential customer, and the customer that you cut off, with your company vehicle is the one that's probably never going to call you again. Okay, so the driving, how we represent the brand on the road is important. I think probably the biggest thing that can tear your brand apart quicker than anything is lack of integrity, and this can manifest in a lot of different ways. It could be a sting on the telephone. It could be a sting on the television. It could be word of mouth. A lot of things can really affect your credibility, but that's probably the quickest way to destroy your brand. Reviews and referrals, with social media, Yelp, your brand can get destroyed pretty quickly if we don't have integrity. So again, it's part of your brand. It's who you are. And more importantly, your team is also watching how much you care about the brand. If we're turning a blind eye to technicians that are maybe not taking an ethical approach because we like to get that revenue, again, the rest of the team looks at that and they see that, and that affects the core of your business and the brand of who you are. Okay, repeatable and consistent, and that's not what we want to be, repeatable. Okay, promises, the promises made by the office and what is delivered in the field must be congruent. So if we're promising something from the office, oh yeah, our tech's going to do this, this, and this, that needs to be delivered by the technician. So there's typically a line of communication there that is critical. I would also offer that that's a two-way communication that has to go from the field to the office. If the technician promises the customer that I'm going to come back tomorrow with that part, then that communication to the office has to be crystal clear and has to be effective as well, so that we book the call, we don't forget to go out there, the parts are ordered. We have to deliver what we're promising. Promises made in the media must also be delivered as promised. So if we have advertising pieces out there, coupons, specials, it's really important that we communicate those to the rest of our team, because what we offer for our customers from a marketing standpoint shouldn't be a secret to the folks that have to deliver that. So training on the marketing pieces, including them, making sure they understand it. Do you have any questions? You know, how do we deliver those types of discounts, coupons, or offers? It has to be consistent and communicated to the technicians. All right. Critical actions. All right. We're looking for repair, replacement, and maintenance maintenance calls that are driven by the end user. Okay, and the model for double-digit profitability, and again, might not be a current reflection of what your business is doing, but the model for double-digit profitability is repair, replacement, or maintenance-driven calls for the end user. Okay, so an example of somebody that would not be the end user would be a home warranty company, for example, or maybe a property management company might not be the end user. So we, you know, a lot of our businesses, we do work for those types of customers, but we know that that's not typically the highest margin activity, okay, with few exceptions. Home warranty businesses typically are going to love you more if you're the lowest price guy in town and they never get a call back on you. You know, so they're looking for cheap, 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 and that's not necessarily the model for double-digit profitability. So as a service manager, this is the model that we focus on. Okay, so don't look for opportunities to take the business in a direction that doesn't support that activity. I would offer focus on your core competency. Don't get distracted by another stream of revenue, you know, especially if you're failing to perform well at what you're supposed to be really great at. And when I say core competency, you know, can we deliver bundled options with a respectable task per call number? You know, are we doing that consistently? Getting your customers excited and involved in your club program, you know, the maintenance program, growing your business, establishing your customer base and making these customers for life is again, it's repeatable. Okay, it's consistency. That's what we're looking for. And if we're struggling with that, we probably shouldn't be looking at, you know, the new shiny object. Running maintenance visits properly. I see a lot of system checks, you know, or maintenance calls run with minimal value or benefit to the customer or the company. So, and what I'm talking about there is, you know, if we're running 20 maintenance visits this week and we're only, you know, upselling one thing on, you know, 1 out of 20, you know, that's not a profitable activity. The only person that benefits there would be the technician. It's not good for the customer, and it's not good for the company. And I've always been a big believer in the triple win. And if you look for the triple win, if it's good for the technician, it's good for the company, and it's good for the customer, we've probably offered the right solution. Okay, but if we're struggling in these areas to really perform at what we're supposed to be best at, and we don't have a good repair conversion, we don't have a good average ticket or task per call, if we're not generating the lead turnovers or the sewer replacement repair opportunities, or if we're not growing our business through the sale of maintenance programs, clubs, or SPPs, whatever you know, call them in your business, you know, we're failing at some of our core competencies. All right, and again, if you're not selling these things or getting the end user involved in these things, it's really hard to create any type of emotional attachment. Okay, critical actions. Again, the model for double-digit profitability supports one-day jobs, and we're talking about not chasing the unicorn. And a lot, I've been guilty of this several times. We see the big job, you know, we've got the big $40,000 job, the $100,000 job, and we chase that, and this is going to make our month, this is going to make our year, and you know, sometimes they do, you know, sometimes they pan out, but there's a lot of times that these big, you know, these big gold mine looking jobs aren't all they're cracked up to be. By the time this dust clears and we've sent technicians out there day after day after day and we become married to this thing, it's pretty easy for the cost to get away. So again, best practice for that double-digit profitability, you know, would be consistent core competency jobs. So if it's HVAC installation, you know, don't get roped into doing the cut-in that's going to take you 4 days to complete when you could be doing 4 complete changeouts in that same period of time at a much profitable level, okay? It's not necessarily good or efficient, it's not what we're looking for there. Next day installs, and I would even offer maybe same day installs. Being booked out 2 weeks is not necessarily good or efficient. And that might feel good. Oh, I'm booked out for 2 weeks. I've got so much work. Well, 2 weeks from now, a lot of those jobs will not be there. Is that fair to say? So being booked out 2 weeks is not good. And I would also offer, it's probably not the great model for customer service. If I'm a customer that needs an air conditioning system or a sewer repaired, I don't want to wait two weeks. That's not good customer service. So it goes back to, staffing. It goes back to culture, attracting the talent, training the talent, all those types of things that affect it. But next day installs, same day installs, that's the key to double-digit profitability, being staffed. One-trip sales. This is the most efficient model. Some of the things that can torpedo this would be maybe we don't have the proper inventory on the vehicle. Poor inventory can affect whether or not we get something done today, one call visit. Poor presentation skills. If we have to figure things out, go back multiple times to get a job. And I understand that there may be some of those, but the efficient model is a one-trip sale. We're out there, we take care of it right now, and we're down the road. Okay, that's efficient, that's most profitable. Another thing that can derail that might be poor product or technical knowledge. If we're really not sure what we're doing and it takes us a couple calls to get this thing handled, again, that really drills into our profitability. And it could also be not having or deploying the proper tools. And these could be, presentation tools like a pricing book or an adequate way to handle customer concerns today. That's what we're looking for. How can I really do a thorough job of explaining this, connecting with the customer, and getting them taken care of today? All right, one-trip sale. The next point that we shared in the super meeting was no accounts receivable. And again, you may have some of this going on with your business. If you have commercial accounts, you're going to have a higher degree of this. But again, we're talking best practices for the service department. And the best practices for double-digit companies, no accounts receivable. So that would be the ideal company model. But let's look at it from a service manager standpoint. Okay, this could be, even in a residential situation, sometimes I see the accounts receivable get out of control. And some of the things this comes down to are we really collecting for the work that we're doing? Are we offering financing? Are we extending company credit? I mean, I still see that occasionally, and if we're extending credit to our customers, that's a real slippery slope, because really it's not a qualified loan, and a lot of that unfortunately gets written off. So that's not the model. Sometimes it's the failure to communicate our desire to get paid to the customer. We could be self-inflicting this at the time that we book the service call. So that's a really important time to make sure that we're scripted correctly. We explain what we're asking our customer to do. We explain our diagnostic fees or the process involved in collection. And at the end of our call, how will you be paying for your services? Credit, cash, check? Great, perfect. Again, we're not the bank. We're heating, air conditioning, electrical professionals. All right, and then the last point on this sheet, no line of credit for normal business. All right, so from an owner standpoint, a lot of businesses are very seasonal, and I understand that. There are some things we can do to reduce it, some maybe not, but it's the best practice. So and just to explain what this really is, a lot of companies may borrow money to get through the off season and then make it back up during the busy seasons, okay? And that can be a really scary situation for an owner, because our money's out there, we're not cash flowing, we're borrowing money to keep everything moving forward, kind of like being a farmer. We're hoping the crop comes in next year and we can pay this loan back, okay? So we don't want to do that. It's not the ideal model. So as a service manager, our goal is to stabilize our department so it's consistent. And some of the things that can really contribute to this are having a great SPP culture, or clubs. That's probably the single biggest thing you can do to reduce your slow times, is building the club base. And we don't wait till we're slow to start selling the clubs and getting people involved in our maintenance program. That's a 24/7, 12-month-a-year activity. The busier we are, the more clubs we sell. And the more clubs you have, the more stable the platform becomes. When I look back at my business was really not that much different in July than it was in April or March or February, for that matter. My maintenance guys ran the same amount of calls per day. My lead turning guys ran the same amount of calls per day. Now, I'm not saying we weren't more profitable in those busier seasons, because we were getting, a more motivated customer, I'll say. But, the platform was stable, and the reason for that had a really intense and successful focus on the clubs. That was job number one within the business, and it stabilized the platform so that we just were not reactive. And we didn't vary from the process that much when it was busy. We might ask a guy to take an extra call a day, but we didn't throw our process out the window. The platform became more profitable and more stable. Another thing we can do is being profitable on the SPPs that we have. So for example, if we've done a great job of selling our maintenance plans, but maybe we're not profitable when we run them, that's a really important area to focus on. As we talked a moment ago, if we're not profitable on our maintenance calls that we've got, that's a problem. And just to clarify, I'm not saying that we're creating a band of thieves. The opportunities are out there if we follow the process and use the evaluation, use the summary of findings, uncover opportunities, share those with the customer, and let them make their choices as to what they want to do. But if we're not looking, if we don't notice things, we're not doing right by our customer. And probably the final thing, that can stabilize it. And I understand we have some businesses that are in different locations that have some specific challenges, but look for complementary seasonal businesses to stabilize the business. Okay, so there are things that we can look for within within the scope of our business that will support us and offer an alternative revenue stream within the off-season. Okay, so those are some of the things that we want to look for, because we don't want to be like the farmer. Okay. Jack Tester, our president, often talks about be, do, and have. And to be the leader of a highly profitable service department, you have to do the things highly profitable service departments do. And if you do those things, you will have a highly profitable service department. And so one of the biggest benefits of being part of Nexstar is, we've got over 500 members that have such a collective knowledge of things that they do extremely well. We want to take advantage of that. Learn from each other, learn from what companies are doing successfully, and don't be afraid to deploy those things. Lean on your business coaches, lean on your accountability coaches. The support is here. Lean on your marketing coaches. The resources are here, but it all starts with you as the service manager to do the things you need to do to make that department profitable, successful. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. So on your control pad, you can click the hand signal, and we'll open that up.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can try to, Jody, the problem when you unmute everybody all at once is those that are listening that aren't using headphones, but they're using their computer, you'll get some feedback. So that's the reason why it's kind of best to unmute people as needed, because then you don't get a bunch of feedback.
Fair enough. All right, do we have any hands raised here?
I don't see any. I'm going to move the questions tab out. I don't see anything on the questions tab either.
Perfect. And this is recorded, so we will be posting this so that you can access this later. or if you have team members that wanted to be here but couldn't today, I understand that. So this is recorded, and we'll wait just a moment longer. Any further questions? You can also type those in. All right. The next TAP call will be hosted by Gresham Ard. It's going to be Friday, January 13th. So he will send an invite after that. We'll get those set up. And I'd really like to thank you for participating and wish you all a fantastic weekend.